I saw, um, not in life, but on television, we have our pilot shows. Because he was a pilot too, right? So he visited, because there's this organization called AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Yeah, AOPA. So great organization. So they invited him to Frederick, Maryland, because that's where they're based, at the Frederick Airport. A month ago, something, month and a half, to take him in a plane up in the air, and that's when I heard about him. And I'm like, man, what a guy. And then I see him yesterday. I'm like, I know that guy. He belongs to my community. He flies. So it was cool, really cool. Very excited to see him. And he saluted. See that?
Yep.
Saluted the president. He followed the protocol, man. I mean,
So, question about protocol here. So, I'm just facing you. I don't have to worry about the camera. Right?
No, yeah. You can look at me once in a while. You could look at the camera.
I'd rather
Yeah.
people talk.
Yeah, it's up to you. But I will occasionally look at one of those, but just ignore me. Should be fine. If you can remember, once in a while, look at that and that. You don't have to constantly stare at it, but so they could get good shots and stuff.
And this news channel goes out to who? Goes out to the local area here?
Yeah. So it mostly caters to Asian American audience, and that's what I was joking in text. Everybody needs people of color in the elections. So mostly focused on Tri-State and Texas, Dallas, Austin, Houston, and California, and yeah,
Oh, nice.
because this is where majority is concentrated. But
Can't wait.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah, I want you to win, man. I'm telling you. You find it hard to believe. I don't know you, but I want you to win. It's about time we took care of the veterans. It's about time somebody who, put the uniform on, sits in the House, especially from this damn liberal state. Into a
yeah, we got some pretty strong candidates. Yeah, they're probably not going to win, but I mean, they're.
no, they will.
I know Tricia Flanagan pretty well.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with Arun Kumar. Today's topic is about the U.S. primary elections, and my guest tonight is David Winkler. David Winkler is a Republican congressional primary candidate for District 8 in the state of New Jersey. Hello, David.
Hey, how's it going, sir?
How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me.
How's your day so far?
Oh, it's going pretty well. A little hectic, but made it out here to come on the show.
Maybe I should ask, how is your campaign going so far?
The campaign's going great.
Yeah.
People are being really receptive to our message and our ability to, reach both the Democrat and independent voters for this primary.
So let's start with who's David?
So who am I? So I am a combat veteran of both the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army. Spent about 14 years on active duty. I switched over to the National Guard, and now I serve as a military police officer, as well as out here on this campaign trail. So looking to bring my veteran values up to Congress come November. So.
Got a military background.
Yep.
So why District 8?
So District 8 is just where I wanted to reside. I wanted to start a place here. Looked at different places. I could have gone over to Brooklyn, New York, but I don't know. I just kind of fell in love with the 8th district over there. So.
Or any other Republican primary candidates in your district, or?
No. So I have no Republican challenger in my district. So I'm literally primed to go up to the general election as of right now. So, and hopefully that stays the case.
What brought you into politics?
What brought me into politics is my love for the country. So, I wrote a huge article on this on the Conservative Choice Campaign's website. Ever since I was little, I just had a deep love for American values, just American people. Knew that I was going to eventually serve, especially right after 9/11 happened or took place. I felt the need to give back to the American people. And, I also decided to get into nonprofit realm or for veterans and give back in advocacy for our Vietnam era that was not being taken care of, Korea, World War II, all the way up to now where there's a lot of issues that need to be tackled, and I just feel like I can bring that kind of advocacy to Congress and fight on behalf of Americans. So.
Talking about issues, right? What are the issues you're most passionate about?
So what I need to do for the New Jersey 8th District is for the economy to actually grow and get out of this struggle that they've been in for the last decade is I need to tackle corruption first. I believe that the corruption aspect has many different layers, whether it be the illegal immigration issue, whether it be local politics, politicians, preying on victimization of our illegal immigrants. I believe also the housing is another issue. The pricing of rent is way too high and unaffordable for our people to live. So there's even schools. Our schools are underfunded. So there's a lot of things I got to take care of home here more than looking at a federal level. So I believe almost in the same as what Donald Trump does, our president, is my district needs to come first, and I need to fix our district before I start looking at the federal issues. And I think that we'll do pretty well come November.
On that note, do you think the presidential elections, the same year as your congressional elections, do you think Trump factor is going to help you?
I think that it's done a great number for the New Jersey people. We just had the rally. We had Van Drew, or Congressman Van Drew, come down, and I think that he switched from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party. So we're seeing a huge red resurgence here in New Jersey. And I think, if I'm going to be quite honest, majority of New Jersey is going to flip red come November.
But the Van Drew factor will help because that's in South Jersey, right? South, as you know, most of the southern counties are red counties, but most of the central and North Jersey. In fact, I would say most of New Jersey is all Democratic,
Yes.
right? How do you think you can fight that?
I just think it opens up the eyes to the voters of, over decades of wrongdoing by Democrat policies. I think that they're now starting to be more open to what Donald Trump may be able to bring to the table, as well as the conservative values or the conservative policies that will definitely help out our economy, our schools, and our people in general. So I think that the voters are kind of tired of the back and forth going on, the polarization and the victimization of our people, specifically in the 8th district. So I think the times for change, they're ready for change.
But history says otherwise. Albio Cyrus, the incumbent, he won like 4 straight terms. So what makes you think you can challenge him?
So what I'll say about him or the incumbent is, as I walk around the streets doing my canvassing, the tone's different. I mean, they're tired of him. They haven't really seen him come down from Washington. He's not in the areas focusing on things like school, where a lot of the schools are underfunded, the infrastructure, to where the immigrant populace is being used by the Board of Education and the local politicians that are using them to go out and canvass and get these people reelected. People are tired of the corruption of the Democratic politicians. And so I'm seeing something otherwise than what Albio is doing up there, or even the rest of the Democrat politicians. I see a huge shift towards a difference of mentality. I'll just put it that way. So,
what other issues do you think did not help Albio Cyrus, and which might help you?
A lot of his foreign policy stances. So he was against the killing of Soleimani. I will say that was one huge thing where he went completely the wrong direction. I believe that there should have been no question whatsoever when it came to taking out Soleimani
or any terrorist.
Yeah, or any terrorist whatsoever. I mean, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't cater to them. I believe he did a lot of damage to the U.S. service members in the form of IEDs. A lot of our wounded service members are a direct result of what Soleimani did. So people are not okay with that. There's a lot going on at the southern border where Cyrus is not necessarily taking the right stance. He's portraying that
the Mexican border.
Yeah, the Mexican border. So he's portraying that we're not allowing these asylees in, but at the same time, he's recognizing what President Trump said since 2016, that there was a lot of danger coming from places like Mexico, El Salvador, and all these other countries. So he's recognizing that there's been a problem, but at the same time flipping his script and saying that Donald Trump's the problem for not letting them in now, which seems to be a problem because, as I said, our taxpayers are having to flip the bill for what's going on at the southern border. And my strong stance on that is that we need to be making these countries pay for their human rights violations. That we should not have to flip the bill for an unjust leader in, say, Venezuela or any of these countries. So,
why do you think they're soft on the illegal immigration, especially along the southern border? The liberals are against the wall and stuff like. What makes them go against it?
So I've just me personally, being Puerto Rican, and just seeing the way Democrats, put their message out is more of a victimization mentality, and telling them that you need our government policies, such as we saw the driver's licenses, or we saw them try to give them health care, and all these other things, but they're never talking about actually giving these people citizenship or giving these immigrants citizenship. It's a way to keep our temporary Band-Aid. And what I provide is a real pathway to citizenship, and I have a lot on my platform to handle that situation, and one of which would be MABNY, and I think,
Yeah, I was going to ask you the question on that. I know you're passionate about the MABNY program. Could you educate our users what MABNY program is and what does it do and how you plan on?
Yeah. So MABNY program, going back in my military history here, I was a recruiter out in Brooklyn, New York from 2014 to 2017. And we had this thing called the MABNY program. It was the military sessions vital to the national interest. And what it was taking people that were on different categories of visas, bringing them over here, and they would serve within the United States Army, and then in exchange, they would be given citizenship within 4 to 6 months. Now, my plan is to take that and put that across all the branches.
Was that 6 months?
So 4 to 6 months, they would get their naturalization within 4 to 6 months.
Oh, I thought it was much more than that.
So,
okay.
So I mean, during the process, they would come over in Brooklyn. I was dealing a lot with the Flushing market, which was the Chinese applicants. I had a lot of West Indies applicants from the Crown Heights area of Brooklyn. I had a lot of people from Africa. I had even a lot of European countries come over, and they would come in, they would take the ASVAB, they would do everything enlistment process-wise. but they would end up getting their citizenship within 4 to 6 months. So it was showing quick and rapid response to giving them citizenship.
What happened to that? I know the Obama administration froze it, right?
Yeah, so it was frozen underneath the Obama administration, and then it was completely just taken away underneath this current administration. And there's been a lot of talks of trying to bring it back. I've seen a lot of Facebook advocacy groups for MABNY. I'm just going to settle that once and for all and try to bring it back to all the branches of service, not just the Army, but I want to make sure every branch of service has the ability to utilize this program.
Was it restricted to Army alone?
Yes, it was just restricted to Army alone.
How do you plan on doing that? Because it's like closed. Do you think you would get federal support?
Yes, I definitely get federal support across the board because this brings over essentially what President Trump has been asking for, which is you're getting a lot of doctors, you're getting a lot of lawyers, you're getting a lot of
translators.
Yes, a lot of translators, a lot of college-educated individuals that are literally here on the work visas, and have to sit there for years, and maybe even go maybe have to sit there and do more court battles for years upon years before they're even given a chance. But this actually gives them the chance to be here, and nothing is more honorable than serving your country while doing it. So,
what are your plans for tax reforms? Do you have any?
So the things that I'm looking at for taxes right now is that I want to reduce the taxes on our businesses in the 8th district. So in the 8th district, we got a lot of mom and pop stores. We don't have really big industry going on in the 8th district. We just have a lot of mom and pop stores. They're being taxed to where there's a max exodus of 68.5% last year alone of all these business owners just leaving. And as I go down and I walk across my district and talk to a lot of business owners, I mean, they can't survive off the rent that's there, so I got to lower the taxes on there. But at the same time, I'm going to be going after these big real estate gurus or these big gigantic corporations, and what I'm going to end up doing is a vacancy tax. So if they have any open apartments within these buildings, I'm going to tax them to dang near where they're on their knees to lower the rent so that people can actually live and they can partake in the economy. So those are my two big things for right now. So.
What's your take on the accumulated student loan debt?
So my
Do you have any ideas to tackle that?
So my idea on the student loan debt is something that I take personally as a military individual. So there's always been a route to take care of student loan debt. I always believe in, hey, if you take out a loan, you should pay back your loan, but the military offers student loan repayment. There's always routes, but people want things handed to them, and I don't believe that is necessarily the American dream. I believe that you should work for it. If you took out a student loan, then you should be obligated to pay it back. I don't believe that we should be attacking institutions or putting government regulations on schools and like that to say, hey, you will pay back their student loans. I don't believe that's the right course of action.
I'm sure you watched the State of the Union speech by the president.
Yeah.
After the speech, I think we talk about trashing paper and other things, but ripping paper has become a fashion after that. So what do you think about this whole...
I think we got a huge polarization going on within our Congress and the Senate, and I think that we need to get back to some sort of stability. I found that move highly disrespectful by Nancy Pelosi. She can call it what she wants to, but ripping the State of the Union just shows immaturity, and we need mature leaders within Congress and the Senate. So,
the president also touched upon several points in his speech, but the other day he also touched upon the criminal, illegal migration and things like that. So I think they resonate with what you are thinking, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about his take on the...
So, I mean, I've always been...
He also spoke about the wall and other things.
So I've always been a supporter of President Trump's plan for the southern border. I believe that, as once again, going back to my military roots, I like to keep the wolf away from the door and not have them come towards our southern border through weakened Democrat policies. I believe that we should not only have a wall down there, but technology as well as funding or proper funding through appropriations for whatever they're asking for. The actual guys that are on the ground having to protect our border, the guys or the women, the men and women, give them what they need. If they're identifying gaps within the defense or the wall itself, give them what they need to be able to secure our border. I don't believe we should be attacking any of our law enforcement down there. I think that is the wrong route, especially when Congress is the one that makes the laws. The law enforcement carry out the laws. So I think that over these last 3 years, we've been I've seen Democrats attack the wrong or the middleman, so to speak, rather than actually sit down and fix their own laws if they have problems with it.
Why do you think there's friction between the federal agencies, Department of Homeland Security or ICE, with states like New York? Why do you think there's so much friction? Why do they disagree with the federal authorities?
So once again, I believe it comes down to the way that the Democrats play for their vote is, off of playing identity politics. It's, saying that, hey, I'm a minority or you're a minority. Anybody that supports Donald Trump is racist, which I think is absolutely insane. But I think that kind of mentality is what keeps these sanctuary cities alive and saying, hey, it's pretty much just using a race card. Now, what I would say about ICE and saying the DHS, a lot of people don't actually know how that came about. So after 9/11, and shortly after, it was around 2003, where ICE came about underneath DHS, and they took over. They have an investigation, detachment. They got a detention detachment, as well as they got the deportation, as well as intelligence assets. So all this is grouped underneath ICE. The common misconception is that they're not out there just rounding up a lot of illegals. They're going after criminal illegals. So they've gone after human trafficking to murders, violent crimes, sexual, sex offenders, and everything else like that. But New York has just kind of been that way. New Jersey is now that way through a directive, made by the Attorney General, where all local law enforcement all the way through state are now allowed to work with federal law enforcement agencies because he considers it a civil issue and not a criminal issue. But once again, if we go back to the...
So per law, what is it? Is it civil or criminal or both?
So it's actually both.
Okay.
So if we look at 8 USC 1325, which outlines the legal entry, yes. It's both a criminal and a civil offense. So when we look at the criminality of it, your first time offense could lead up to 6 months in jail, which would be your maximum time. Now, any other additional criminal activity could result in more misdemeanors or more felonies. So the argument that it's a civil offense is moot when it's actually both. And they are aiming to, I guess through Congress, to remove the criminality aspect and just keep it civil. But until then, they must comply with federal law, and it is a criminal offense.
Now, as part of a campaign, I'm sure you're walking through streets in District 8. Mm-hmm. Do you think, do the people consider this whole sanctuary concept as a factor in terms of voting?
They do, in the sense that they're complaining about it because it's killing our businesses over there. And the business owners are upset because they're getting undercut through free labor. And so, yes, it does come down to a lot of, voter issues of what are you going to do about it. And a lot of people are afraid to even touch this issue because they feel like they're going to lose elections or whatever it may be. I'm front and center to attacking it and making sure we're doing right because our businesses cannot be undercut by free labor. So
talking about foreign policy, what do you think are some top foreign policy issues to focus on for the U.S.?
So I definitely agree with President Trump's two White House priorities for Iraq and Afghanistan. He's laid out through Secretary Pompeo what he needs to get done, and I'm a firm supporter and an ally of him on this one. So we need to reduce U.S. casualties in Afghanistan as well as reduce the amount of costs. I believe that should be our main focus. When the Commander-in-Chief says, "Hey, I want to get out of Afghanistan," we should follow. And so should the Pentagon and the rest of the DoD should follow his move there.
Do you think, on that note, do you think Afghanistan is stable enough to survive with a stable government on its own? Should we pull out our troops?
I'm going to be quite honest with you, no. And I think that's due to the...
That's what I was hoping to say.
So it's due to the stagnation of what's called the CSTICA commands and the ISAF command. They become comfortable with the private sector, as we call the military-industrial complex, of just keeping this going. I've sat back and had conversations, and I will tell you that the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Defense are still not linked together. Our advisors are not getting the work done or getting the job done. The warfighters, let me be clear, the warfighters have done their piece. We're waiting on the politics of this to get done with here. And so, you know, for me in multiple deployments overseas, I've noticed that once again we're using warfighters as diplomats instead of, you know, having diplomats actually come over and train, assist, and advise their counterpart over there, which I think is necessary to create that stable government, or it's going to collapse if we just pull out.
Right. The reason why I asked that question is not so much Pakistan, because it supports terrorism. Mostly the people, the civilians in Afghanistan and India and other countries are worried that if once the U.S. pulls out, they would be fearless, the Taliban, and they could just commit atrocities, you know, shamelessly and openly. That's what the neighboring countries are worried about, which is why I asked you the question.
Yeah.
So when do you think is an appropriate time for us to, or what should we do before we pull them out?
So what we need to do is make sure that we're giving what the Afghan government's asking for. I think that's where a lot of the conflict has come in, is we're giving U.S. solutions for Afghan problems. Instead of actually having our Afghan counterparts sit down with us at the table, they're dictating to us what they need to be able to have a successful exit. We need to be embracing that.
But we said a few times. I mean, I don't think it led to any fruition.
Yeah. But I mean, that still just needs to happen in the sense that we need to sit down and make sure that their army can stand up on their own, that their actual, you know, MOI or Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense can stand up on their own and take over. But until then, I don't think that, I mean, this will be a few years. I'm going to be quite honest. This will be a few years before we're able to pull all troops out. I would tell you in Afghanistan, once again, I think there's a lack of freedom of movement still when it comes down to the IED crisis that's still over there. It's things that I'm working with on my campaign to attack IEDs in Afghanistan still. So,
all right, let's talk about the personality now. What do you think, what do you think folks are expecting from a congressman or congresswoman when they're running for Congress? What are some qualities you think a citizen should expect?
Somebody, a workhorse, somebody that's going to actually, it's not words, it's actions. So they're going to actually get out there and they're going to do right for the American people. I believe in maturity. I think that a lot of what we see in Congress is the lack of willing to reach to the other side of the aisle and work with somebody for the benefit of all Americans. One of the biggest things is a system of government that is for and by the people. I think we've gotten away from that in Congress, and that's something I bring to the table. And I know you probably heard of this phrase before, but servant leadership, where the people don't serve me, I serve the people. That mixed with what's called engaged leadership, where I'm always around to see what's going on. If I'm not around, I can't be an effective leader. I have to be able to see what's going on, not only in my district, but up at Washington, be able to see big picture wise. And just as I said, somebody that supports not only Congress, Senate, but it supports the President of the United States. I think a lot of times that we work against the President, whether it be President Trump or any of the Democrat 2020s. I'm here to work with the President and achieve good for the American people.
So what do you think about imposing a term limit on congressmen?
So that's actually one of my platforms, is I believe in term limits. I believe that corruption happens with career politicians. When they're up there, they just become comfortable after a while, and they forget who they're serving. And it's about them and their wants and their needs. I believe that we should impose some sort of term limits. So obviously, I want to make sure that my constituents, you know, have a say in what the terms would look like for Congress or Senate. So.
Yeah, but then historically, we tried to pass some bills that didn't go through. Yeah. They got rejected.
I mean, it's worth, you know, to keep that momentum going and keep trying to have those conversations. As I said, I think it comes down to money. In the end of the day, where, you know, senators and congressmen, all the way up through the executive branch, whether it be the president, they get a lot of money and a lot of, you know, stuff that comes along with it. So a lot of people are hesitant to go with term limits because they want to rake in as much money as they can. I'm just not one of those kind of people. All I care about in the end of the day is that my district's taken care of, and that my veterans are taken care of, and the American people are taken care of. So.
On that note, what are your plans for veterans?
So my plans for veterans is one of the things I want to do for anyone that's seeking office veteran-wise, I want to make sure that I set up a wait for them to intern with the congressman or senator of their choice within their areas, so they can learn the process through that. I think that we're doing a great job right now as a former veterans advocate and a CEO of a national nonprofit. I would say that we're doing a pretty decent job. What I would think needs to happen is that we need to create the coalition for veterans up at the congressional and in the Senate level to help advise them on different things that they need. It's been taking way too long for the Blue Water Act. It's been taking way too long for Veterans Choice. It's been taking way too long for a few other things that veterans are fighting for. But if they're up there as a coalition in one voice, I think we can get more done. I think that UCMJ is another way, another thing that needs reform when it comes to the appealing of upgrades of discharges to even non-judicial punishment, court martials, or things like that. It takes way too long to go through the appellates, as well as I'm seeing it through Senate and Congress, as well as people aren't getting things that should be overturned, and I believe that setting up an independent agency that works alongside our Congress and Senate whenever they do an inquiry to give a neutral stance on something may benefit a lot of these veterans.
What do you think are some of the challenges for the U.S., for our nation, and let's say maybe in a decade or two?
Right now, the biggest thing for me is the polarization. I think that Democrats and Republicans are way too far apart, and I think that harms the American people. That a lot of people want to be moderate. They want to be somewhat towards the middle, but I think we got way too far left, and I think we got way too far right. And I think that that's really what's hurting us. And people, this is definitely going to affect us, years down the road if we don't fix it now.
Well, why David? What makes you think you're going to win?
I have what it takes to lead these people. I went overseas. I put my life on the line for this country, and I'm doing the same thing here. On the streets out here in my district. Like, I literally care for these people. I mean, there's not a person within my district or America I wouldn't lay my life down for in a heartbeat. And this isn't about me. This is about a movement to make sure that we bring back a system of government that is formed by the people, not my own self-interest.
Well, good luck then. On behalf of Mana TV, I wish you all the very best. Any closing comments?
No, so if you guys happen to be or want to check us out, you guys can look at my campaign website at www.votedavidwinkler.com. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much for coming to my show.
Thank you.
And all the very best. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this week. Until next week, take care. God bless America.